As of recently, as you all should know, Pope Francis, one of the most progressive popes in the history of Vatican City and the Roman Catholic Church, passed away. Following the death of Pope Francis, who is a great pope, a papal's conclave was held in the Vatican, where all 52 cardinals got together and they got to decide who they want the next pope to be. They would say a prayer, and after their prayer, they would cast a ballot with whoever they want to be the next pope's name on it. If no cardinal had gotten 2/3 of the majority, all the ballots would be burnt and smoke would come out the Vatican black. And if a cardinal did get 2/3, then they would be appointed pope. White smoke would come out, and the pope would be announced later that night. We do have a new pope. First, I'm going to go over all of the people who were prominent in the papal's conclave, who all were expected to win, who actually won, and what this means for Roman Catholicism. Now, I will be ranking the candidates for pope on how well they did in the poly market. So if they did really good in the poly market, they're going to go up first. And if they didn't do very well in the poly market, well, then I'll explain them later. Now, the number one, the leader in the poly market, was the Secretary of State for the Vatican, Pietro Parolin. Now, Parolin was a he was a moderate. He was socially a little bit conservative, but also a little bit liberal. He was very conservative under Benedict, pretty progressive under Francis. He really only believed in what that pope at the time believed in. Secretary Parolin did. So, Secretary Parolin was not a good option. He really didn't believe in anything, in my opinion. Following him, in second place, was Luis Antonio Tagle. Tagle was the Filipino candidate for pope, and he is a progressive. He supports LGBTQ people. He supported helping the poor. He was like a Filipino Francis. They called him the Francis of the East. And he was the most aligned with Francis. Following him was Pier Battista Pizzaballa. Pizzaballa was one of the most conservative popes in the race. He was a conservative, but he wasn't too conservative. He held conservative beliefs, but he didn't put that in front of his theology, which made him palpable to moderates as well. In fourth place on the poly market was Matteo Zuppi, who was an Italian, and Zuppi believed that Zuppi was for Catholics who believed that Francis wasn't progressive enough. That they still liked Francis, but Zuppi would have been much more progressive than even Francis and Tagle. Zuppi was by far the most progressive person running for pope. And then there was the rest of the people who weren't really listed on the poly market as much. Then, following him, was Robert Serra. Serra was appealing to the more like TikTok teenager conservatives who were really only Catholic because they liked how traditional it was, but really they're closer to Eastern Orthodox, like with Patriarch Bartholomew. And Serra he'd be the first African pope, and he was by far and away one of the most conservatives, not the most. And he appealed to young, traditionalist, J.D. Vance style TikTok Catholics is what I call them. He appealed to conservative Vance TikTok Catholics, the Vance TikTok Catholics. And following him was the most conservative cardinal, Peter Erdo. Erdo was Italian as well, and Erdo is, while not as confrontational as Serra, Erdo still was the most, like, theologically conservative. You know, Sarah appealed to your TikTok Vances. Erdo appealed to your deeply theological, like, deeply involved in Catholicism, old conservatives, which made him the most conservative because, you know, like, Sarah Vance TikTok Catholics don't really have theology. They just go for whichever one they think is cool. At least Erdo, old conservatives, have a theology, like a real theology based on what they believe in. Two other people who tried to be pope were Ahmed al-Salim, a cult leader who said that he killed Pope Francis and is the rightful pope by God, and Donald Trump. However, the thing that shocked everyone, on May 7th, the first day that the papal conclave was held, black smoke came out the chimney, meaning a new pope. Did not happen. A runoff was held. Everyone voted again. And Secretary of State Parolin didn't win. Tagle didn't win. Pizzaballa, Zuppi, Sarah, and Erdo did not win. Instead, it was Francis-style progressive Robert Prevost, the first American pope ever elected, winning as the Pope of the Vatican City. Now, cardinals always take on a new name once elected Pope, just like Prevost took on the name of Pope Leo the 14th. Pope Leo the 14th. And Pope Leo the 14th is about as progressive as, well, a little bit more conservative than Tagle and Francis were, but much more progressive than Secretary of State Parolin and the other conservatives were. He supports the majority of the things Francis supported and is expected to be just as, if not possibly more progressive than Francis. Now, the day before Pope Francis died, he met with J.D. Vance. They shook hands, and many people, from what I've seen, believe that J.D. Vance killed Pope Francis in hope that maybe Robert Serra or Peter Erdo would be the next pope. However, the new pope, Leo, has explicitly went after J.D. Vance and Trump, calling them far-right conservatives and saying they do not believe in what Roman Catholicism teaches. However, the new pope, Pope Leo the 14th may be, I wish him luck and God bless the new pope. Thank you and good night. In conclusion, I would say Zuppi, Francis, Tagle, and the new Pope Leo are the best. Below them is Secretary Parolin and Pizzaballa. Below him is Erdo. And below that is the cult leader, what's his name? And Sarah. And obviously, the man himself, the president. Good night.